Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. It is Monday, March 15th, 2021, 10 a.m. Central, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Today I'm going to talk a bit about divine right. I'm running it at Gary Con XIII, which runs March 25th to 28th, although I'll be doing this on the 25th, Thursday evening. It may already be full, or maybe there's one seat left last time I looked, but that's been before the weekend, so don't take my word on it. In any event, it doesn't mean you can't play sometime, and if it's not at GaryCon, it could be someplace else. So, Divine Right is a early, an early TSR war game. It was created 1975. Hmm. It was brought to TSR from the outside, but of course circles were pretty tight in wargaming back in those days, particularly amongst designers. The Ramen brothers, Glenn and Kenneth, brought it to TSR to 79. I said 75, didn't I? I meant 79. Artists in house for it included David Sutherland, Dave Trampier, and Tom Wham, the legendary, still in Lake Geneva and hanging out and playing games, Tom Wham. There are a lot of cool things about it. Not much more so than its classic map. Somebody took a picture of the. I'm going to go over onto Board Game Geek and try to get a good shot of the full map because it looks different in Vassal. And that's what I'm talking about is, let's see here. Oh, you know what? I can just switch over on the monitor to this over to Board Game Geek. Show off the cover. Here's a version of the map that they used for the 25th anniversary. Not as pretty, in my opinion, as the map used for the original 1979, where what they did was they put a lot of the tables that you'd need to check along the outside of the board. Let's see, here we go. This will be it, I believe. I'll have to bigify it. Let's call it marginalia, and I believe Tom was actually in charge of that marginalia. This is a revamping of it, but there were a lot of tables along the side that you could reference during the game, including what the costs were for moving through various terrain. Can we even enlarge it further? Nah, I think that's as big as it gets. This was recreated, but it's very similar to the original. Maybe we can still find the original one. there's uh, there's Bob and Sarah in the chat today. She's in she's invoking Nirvana, telling me here we are now, entertain us. So I could dig that. It's worth doing. Hey, as long as I'm here. Here's a setup on the table. Again, you can see all the marginalia around the side. The boards contain the turn tracker is at the bottom. There's the classic TSR logo wizard, and then 79 what they were using. In any event, what I want to talk about is Vassal. Vassal is a virtual tabletop program that you can use. You can download it here at vassalengine.org. I'll have the links in the description in the show notes, so you can do that if you wish. They've been around close to 20 years, I think, so they've been at this quite a while. It's version 3.5.3 for Windows, the 64-bit, which is what I use. It is a site that relies on donations, a program and site that relies on donation is otherwise free. So if you do pick it up for free, consider stopping back and maybe throwing some money in the kitty to help them support it. I'm sure it's a labor of love to some extent, but nevertheless, there are some costs in that anyway. This says copyright 2009 to 2020. I'm pretty sure that's just the website because if I'm not mistaken, Vassal's been around longer than that. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's only been 12 years. Source code. Nope, I'm looking down here. I'm not getting any other dates. So maybe 2009 is it. In any event, it's super useful. There are all sorts of modules. This might be the virtual tabletop that is most adept at handling war games. Each war game that is on Vassal or is able to be used through Vassal will require you to go through their wiki and download specific modules for specific games. 2 to 6 players for Divine Right, Fantasy, Era, Topic, Conquest, Scale, Strategic. It is a big overview type of game. Current module iteration is 3.2 for Divine Right. That's what you'll want to download. I haven't downloaded this immunity, and there's an older version there, but this new version works just great. It covers everything you need. Just got to look around. Here's a quick screenshot of what it will look like. This is an older screenshot, so it's not showing all of the buttons that are available in the newer module. But we'll get to that because I'm going to open it up right now. Let me see if I can find it quickly enough. Once you download it, put it on your system. It'll probably be in a Vassal program in your in a Vassal folder within your programs. Good morning, George. Once you click to open it, and you know what? I'm just going to do this. Like my background, it's a train ride, my friends. Vassal 3.5.3 and modules that you have downloaded will be in a list here. I only have Divine Right downloaded. Double click on that, and we will see what comes up from that, or how quickly it will, and we'll walk you through all the steps. Welcome, it says, Divine Right. Select play mode. Next will be choose a side, so on and so forth. Start a game offline, so you can do this if you all want to sit around a single computer or possibly use like a LAN system. You could probably just play together at home without even being connected to the internet once you have it on your system. Look for a game online or load a saved game. And I'll show you about keeping a log so you can have saved games show up. You want this wizard to start up every time, so just leave that checked. Don't get yourself in the trick bag on that. Start a new game offline is what we'll say because we just want to go through the steps. We don't want to jump into someone's game and throw it off or put it on its heels. Join game at which side, it asks. You can be an observer in games and just watch other people play, which is something you can do with games that are already online and running if you like. The thing you want to look at here, though, are all the different factions the Black Hand Dwarves, Eaters of Wisdom, Elfland, Hothier, Immer, Mivir. Did I mention this was a fantasy war game set in a fantasy world cooked up by the Ramen brothers, as I mentioned before? Mivir, Mutar, Pon, Ramboon, Shukasm, the Trolls, and Zorn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different factions. A couple of them are tricky to play because they're Black Hand and Eaters of Wisdom are kind of tricky to play because of their use of magic. It's a little more involved. You have to refer to the rule book a bit more. Dwarves and Trolls are disparately placed in several places around the kingdom, so they have a number of strongholds that are on the borders of other lands or up in neutral area. But aside from that, almost every other one, I believe, is set up as a independent kingdom with a number of hexes under its control and a border all around it. You'll also see that several of them in the lower left-hand side of the map have direct access to a sea. Mivir, Ramboon, Shukasm, and Hothier, I believe, yes, all have access to a sea off to the left. So they also have ships which can transport troops and take part in combat at sea. Now, there are mercenaries you can get in this game, and some of them are land-based. Most of them are, and there are also some mercenary ships. So even if you don't start off with ships, if you get to the sea and you find you need some, you can certainly hire some mercenaries and use them to transport. I'm going to jump in right in the middle as Mivir. I think that's the easiest one to show. And then we'll click finish. And the game will open up. Oops, start in a second. We're not going to start a log file. That is something to show. Now you'll see the map. We're only seeing the upper left corner, as you could probably tell from this. What you can do is go out to this magnifying glass and fit visible. We'll actually make the log area smaller. Then we'll fit visible again. It makes the map a little bit bigger. But there are a number of controls up here, including this map control to zoom and rescale. You've got 120, 100%, 80%, 60%. Other if you want to be at a different fit width. Now we're only seeing the top half of the map, bottom half. Mutar, that's the one. Oh, Mivir's way over here. We should rejoin as... Oh, let's see. Games active. Current side is switch to which side? We want to switch to Mutar. If we didn't already have that. It just easy because of the yellow background, it'll be easier to see the physical materials that they use. Also fit width, fit height, and of course fit visible will look the same right now as fit height, or maybe just a little more, a little larger. So you can see the different lands. The dwarves are up here in the left, this light green, as well as owning this light green over here and over here to the far right middle of the map. The trolls up here at the crag in the upper right. In this, there's this light brown or this dusty brown through the left side of the map and all around the right side of the map and surrounding Shukasm is all kind of wasteland. So it's neutral territory. It's not run by anybody, not held by any of these nations. Ramboon, lower left, Hothier, Mivier all around the water. Chukasm is access to the water, or this narrow passage, and a castle on the sea. Hey, Hobbsy, how you doing? Lexfire, once you download Vassal, you then need to download the modules to play games. Is that right? That is correct. Just before you got here, I took people through the steps of that. I'll have links in the show notes showing where to get the Divine Right module, but of course, and where to download Vassal, the main program. But of course, once you've downloaded the Divine Right module, you can certainly tool around on their wiki, and there are any number of other modules for other war games that you can check out. I know our friend Matt Archibald is fond of Advanced Squad Leader, good old ASL, which is probably one of the more complex war games of the last half a century. Very detailed, and being able to play it on Vassal is a real godsend for the folks that love to do it. I'm going to point out here toward the upper, just off the middle of the map, up to the left, you'll see a gray area. That is the Eaters of Wisdom kingdom there. And up to the right, that gray area, Terror of Zardoz is run by the Black Hand. That's that other faction. Those are the two magical kingdoms, or run by wizards. Everything else, Zorn is run by goblins. Elfland by elves, of course. Remember, we did point out the trolls and the dwarves. And these other kingdoms are all human-based. So Immer, Mutar, Pan, Hothier, Mivier, and Ramboon, and Shukasm are 7 human kingdoms. So too, let's have a look at, if we go up here to this, and we want to check out Mutar, it will open up a player board, if you will, a player card, which includes all of your troops, including a designated leader with a crown on him, and an ambassador. And you get to go through all of those. Download and found the wiki module. Oh, you're doing it now. Okay, George. Real good. In case anybody else is interested, I guess I could pop that into the chat right now. I did not know what you were saying was that you needed them right away. I thought rather you were reminding me to let people know. There's the Vassal engine, and for the Divine Right module, you can go right here and pick that up there. So there we go. Let me see. A couple more things to look at here. And I won't go over absolutely everything, but there's a few things you should know. See the hourglass upper middle of the buttons? Turn counter and turn order are the two things it does. You'll want to have the turn counter open, which will let you keep track of those turns that were on the bottom of the map, the old school map. And you'll also want to use turn order, which are turn chits. That is small pieces of cardboard that people will choose at the beginning of each turn to figure out who goes first, second, third, on through 7th, 6th, yeah. You'll just pull one, and it'll tell you what number you are. Someone else will pull one. You just remember your number after you've pulled yours. There you go. Number 1. And number 6. And then it empties it. So they figure on 6 players for this game. I've seen games run where people play with 7 players, and it's not impossible. But one thing to remember, Mapronomicon? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Misread that as Vaseline engine. Absolutely. That is a very different game. The the thing about this game is that you have an ambassador because there's a lot of diplomacy in this game, even with nations that aren't being run by players, which everybody gets to randomly assign or choose one depending on how you want to play at the beginning of any game session. But the other lands that are not being run by players are very much in play because at the beginning of every turn, you have a diplomacy phase where you can send your ambassador over to the kingdom, over to the rather seat of power, the capital of any other kingdom, and you can roll a die to activate them and attempt to diplome. Mutar Ambassador attempts activation result of 2. That won't be enough. You need like a 6. Now, of course, at the beginning of every turn, you also hit this lightning bolt. And that does a random events roll. Bad omens. The regulars of one kingdom won't fight or siege on this turn. Movement not affected. Determined randomly from among player, kingdom, and allies. So once your ambassador has managed to secure one or two other nations as allies, this particular random bad omens event, would force you to have one of the countries you're running, including your own, not be allowed to fight or siege that turn. You could still move, but you can't initiate or get into combat. If somebody attacks you, that's a different story, of course. I read your name correctly. Excellent. Hey, Rick, good to see you too there. Like Necronomicon, Mapronomicon. It's an excellent name. At the beginning of the game, though, you're going to click this explosion button, which deploys all of your troops. You'll find out, as I'm scrolling over it, you can see that the different troops will have different names on them, which is their place of deployment. There are a number of cities, for instance, here in Mutar, where you can deploy troops. I'll just click that button. You'll notice now, and we'll zoom in on that a little bit. I'll move this off to the side. We'll bring Mutar down into visual range. It gets most of it. Notice Bioland, I have a number of, double click on them to separate the stack, because there are actually 2. Double click on it again. I think once you put it on, they become stacked, and then you can move them all at once. That might not be true. Inside castle. Okay, we're not going to do that. So if you hover over a stack, you'll see there are how many chits are in that stack, how many units, and you'll be able to determine the strength. Oh, I see. That's right. You do this to stack them together. Just kind of hold the left mouse button down as you sweep over them, and that'll place them in a stack so they can be moved together. There's a 1 there. That's the defense of the castle. You've got 2 troops. They each have a movement of 5. And, of course, each one has a strength of its own 1. So, Grote, we've got a couple of units there. Yando, just 1 there. But Yando has no strength there. Grote has a strength of 3. We'll move the ambassador out of the way. The king is not its own strength, but it can move troops. So notice it says strength of 3 because there are 3 units there. The difference for the leader is that it has a movement of 7, whereas the regular troops in this particular country have a movement of 5. But when they are stacked with the leader, they can all move 7. So he increases your movement. Notice the castle has a 4, so it's the strongest castle in the kingdom. 1, 2 troops at Pliba, and Basimar has 3 and a castle that's pretty strong at 3. What was Plibal's? Pliba. That's 2. So you've got a place with a 1. You got a couple of 3s. You got a 2, and you got a 4 at the main castle. And your troops are pretty well spread out. That's kind of why I like looking at Mutar as an example. Everything's named. It's a really neat map, right? We should also look at. Oh, let me just say that when you roll that dice at the beginning, when you hit that lightning bolt, you'll get a diplomacy card, and it will also roll a random event. The diplomacy card you can flip, take a look at it yourself. As long as it's yours, no one else can see it. Black magic +2. You can use these diplomacy cards to help you affect your diplomacy roll. Well, black magic is bad to use in some respects because if you use it and you fail to create an ally from that person, you'll be banished from their kingdom for several turns. Each turn, I believe, is meant to be a year in the in-game world. So, stuff happens slowly in that regard within the game world. What else can we look at real quick because we're almost done? Oh, this grid up here. This is the various tables that you'll need to open up and access during the game off to the side in a separate window. It tells you that 1 movement point to move through a clear hex, such as these in the middle here of Mutar. 2 movement points per hex for forest, whether it's this kind of forest here, or there are other types of forests in other parts of the world, conifers and whatnot are Mutar though. Rivers, 2 movement points per hex moving into, across, or along. So it is, I believe, terrain effects are cumulative. To enter a forested mountain hex, for example, would cost 5 movement points. Mountains, and there's an asterisk on that because there are passes that let you go through the mountains. 3 movement points per hex. A piece entering a mountain hex must cease movement. Units defending in a mountain hex may add 1 to the combat die rolls, so they're defensively very useful. But if you're moving through a mountain hex with a river, such as this one here, over here, just lower right of the crow's nest in Pon in the blue, then that's going to be 2 points for the river, 3 points for the mountains. Plus, when you enter it, you have to stop because mountains require that. In any event, that's a good overview of a lot of that. You've got the other tables here, the order of player turn, roll for random events, draw a diplomacy card. That happens simultaneously in the online game here. Conduct diplomacy. You can do a number of things. Activate a non-allied, non-player monarch. Attempt to deactivate any enemy-allied non-player monarch. Attempt to assassinate any one enemy-allied non-player monarch. That's something you can only do once a whole game, though. Duel an enemy ambassador. So you can take out someone else's ambassador by beating him in a duel and put him back on his heels for a few turns. Bring in a special mercenary. Those diplomacy cards sometimes include cards that evoke a special mercenary, leader, or troops. Attempt to raise a barbarian army. You can go to the edges of the map and attempt that, although if you fail, they will kill you. D, resolve sieges. E, then movement, and F, resolve combat. That's an entire order of play for each player's turn. There's a leader fate die roll. You can possibly be killed or captured. There is you could attempt to retreat before combat to avoid a bad outcome when you're very outnumbered. Barbarian recruitment table is down here. Ambassador burned at the stake. Uh-oh. One friendly barbarian unit deserts. And then it's got the victory points down here. Plundering an enemy castle or an enemy allied castle is 5 times the castle defensive strength. We went over the castle's strengths, right? Plundering an enemy or enemy allied royal castle is 10 times. So that big one that we showed you in, which is in white, right, with a little crown on it for Mutar, is worth 10 times the defensive strength, in this case of 4. So you conquer that. That's 40 points right there. Capturing an enemy allied monarch, 30 points. Killing an enemy allied monarch, 40 points, whether that happens in combat or as an assassination. And finally, capture or kill an enemy player monarch, 70 points. That's a big deal. So you've got all the stuff you need to play all on those little boards, and you open them up basically up here. There are some other buttons up here for getting mercenaries, barbarians, markers. There are battlefield markers for when something's been destroyed and whatnot. This is for rolling dice for combat, whether it's battle or siege, or if you're retreating. This is just for rolling dice in general. And what's this here? This is a place to keep track of alliances, or to, once you've added them in, when an alliance has been rolled for and happens, it'll chalk up in here and you can keep track of them there or check in on them. We've got that. There's also a little button, this quill and ink, in case you want to keep notes as things go of things that you're want to make sure people know about that happened in game, or different points. You can do that publicly or privately, or delayed time for when people are, say, shunned by a nation for a little period of time. Once again, this is for resizing the board. This button, this eyeball, see the tokens on the board right now? You can remove them all from view temporarily so that you can see what's underneath. Check all the numbers and whatnot. And this binoculars buttons let you move around the board in a different way. It's all good. Check it out. I will, let's see, come back over here. Anyway, that's Divine Right on Vassal. It's a pretty useful little game. There is a button I didn't see on there. Oh, one of the download, or one of the, if you drop down the help menu, you can also click on bring up the rules. Yeah, let me show that real quick. Up over here, upper left, help, rules. It's got a getting started, user's guide, a number of other things that I just went over. But if you click on rules, it will open them up in their own window online, and then you can just kind of have all of that at your fingertips, read through them. They're identical to the rules that come with the game in the box. It details the symbols on the various chits, including some of the special ones. Oh, a dragon. Talks about what the individual cards look like. There are personality cards for the non-player nations. So when they get activated, you draw a card that suggests a certain personality for them. And that personality might say that they are militaristic, so that they have a bonus when they're in combat, or it might say that they're paranoid, so it's -1 less of a chance of being able to diplome with them, to get them to join you as an ally. They might also have something that suggests that they're very good-hearted, and therefore, if you attempt to use black magic when trying to convince them as an ally, thank you, Sarah. I'm glad I infotained you well. Um, but if they're very good-hearted and you try to use black magic or threats on them, and it doesn't work, then you might be banished from their kingdom for several turns before your ambassador can return there. There are also rules for if you cross a border into another nation that is currently neutral, you will raise their hackles and they will ally with an enemy nation of yours um, automatically, randomly though, uh, and throw down against you. So you got to be careful. Got to be real careful. Well, that's about it. We went a little long there, but I think that's fine. We wanted to cover everything. I want to thank everybody. Article Justicar, good to see you. And everybody who showed up today, thank you very much. If you haven't before, please do follow the channel. If you are catching up with this on YouTube, by all means subscribe over there and give us a thumbs up on any videos you watch and enjoy. Feel free to drop a comment if you want to make some constructive criticism or just join in the conversation about the game or the show or whatever you happen to decide to do. OK Grognard Show you can catch on Twitch, streaming live Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Central from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I do want to say thank you once again. Everybody who's watching on Twitch, everybody who's watching on YouTube, have a good week. And remember, we're only about 10 days out from Virtual Gary Con, so be ready on this Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Central, if you've got the regular tickets like I do, to sign up for events. And we'll see you there. This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.